Hi, my name is Maren McHugh, and I'm hoping you're watching this because you are either a new client or a potential client or um, someone who's just generally curious about learning more about internal family systems and the overlap with somatic modalities. Now, my intention with this 30-ish minute video is to create a foundational understanding of what these modalities are. In part because a lot of time can be spent in session or in experiences just describing the model, which is beneficial and important. And I would love to be able to have that foundational understanding in place before we connect so that we can go deeper quicker. Now, what you will not receive in this video is really clear detail of what the practice looks like one-on-one or in groups. There are multiple different ways that we can work with these modalities, and can be quite different for each person depending on how their system is organized. But I do want to speak briefly to, my why of what it is about these modalities that have landed so well in my system. These few pictures I have on the screen right now are showing little snapshots in my journey up to this point. As a young child, I had a lot of distress in my system, distress that I didn't understand, um, that I didn't know what to do with. And it shifted me towards a very external process of pursuing big goals. If I could just get X, Y, and Z, then I will be happy. And many of these goals I did achieve. I got a full ride scholarship and played basketball at a Division I school in California. And as I reflect on my journey, that was one of the moments where I really recognized I'm not doing well, right? I'm on this beautiful campus. I have all these things I thought I needed to be happy. And yet I'm the same person having the same struggles, the same thoughts taking over. And that led me to a pretty intense breakdown for a few years. So I turned to art. I practiced expressing what I was feeling, my existential crisis, my loss of identity, my sense of flailing and what is real, what is not, who am I? And while this was very helpful, along with learning, meditation and mindfulness techniques to really learn how to be with myself while I was experiencing, unhealthy compulsions, those served an important purpose, but could only take me so far. And it was when I learned and began practicing internal family systems and somatic work that things started to really, realign and crystallize in terms of not only who I am, who I think I am, but how I can be with myself as I'm experiencing these very normal um, thoughts, compulsions, desires. And that's what, really I want to kind of focus on a little more at this point is that these models, internal family systems and somatics, are non-pathologizing. This is a process of normalizing our ambivalence, our struggles, of being able to learn how to turn towards and be with what we are experiencing in a visceral, tangible way. Now, I can relate to this myself, and I hear this from a lot of clients, is this experience of, I know better, or I know what I need to do, or I think I know what I need to do, but here I am not doing it. Right? This idea of I see the change I desire. I for some of us, I see the life I want to live, and yet there's something holding me back. Something stops me from doing the daily practice that I said I want to do. And those are the choice points or the moments in time that we can use internal family systems and somatics to slow things down and start gathering information and referring to a part of me really wants X, yet another part of me really wants Y. Well, let's step back and be relational with these parts and get to know them. And this process has been life-changing for me and something that I just love facilitating for others and with others. So, over the course of this presentation, what I hope you walk away with is an understanding of the model of IFS, internal family systems, right? It's an important piece of it. What is this? What are some of the language pieces that you will be getting to know, and some examples of how it might look? And again, clarity into the overlap of why internal family systems and somatics work so well together. And potentially some insight into looking at your own struggles in a new way. So let's continue on. So we will begin with this quote from Dr. Richard Schwartz, the creator of internal family systems. He says, "It is becoming increasingly clear that the idea of the mind as unitary is a relatively recent invention of civilized society. Indigenous cultures throughout the world were familiar and comfortable not only with a spirit world, but also with an inner realm inhabited by many different voices and characters. It may be that the idea of the normal mind as multiple is less a radical departure from established knowledge than it is a returning to an age-old wisdom from which established knowledge radically departed." So IFS is a model of multiplicity. It is using this assumption that we have a higher self or an essential self or a spirit or multiple different names speaking to the same thing, but this wise inner adult that we want to have as the leader of our system. And this wise inner adult is leading the multitude of internal parts that we have in our system. And I'll go through the goals of IFS shortly, but some common phrases or concepts you're going to hear are, again, the higher self or self with a capital S, protector parts. So these would be managers or firefighters. And the protectors, the managers, the firefighters are protecting exiles, which often are quite young parts in our system that are carrying burdens in the form of energetic frequency, beliefs, or somatic pain or tension that come from this life or intergenerational experiences that we have had, or the cultural narratives that we have internalized that cause pain, narrowing, dysfunction in the system. And the protectors, the managers and the firefighters are doing everything they can to avoid touching this pain or doing anything that might activate the pain in a big way. So that's the basic premise of the internal family systems model. So I created this image as a way to kind of bring a little bit more potentially visceral understanding of how these protectors and exiles might show up in our system. So behind the brick wall is the image of an exile. So this would be, again, potentially a young part, but not always. It can be later in life that we exile feelings or experiences or aspects of our being for multiple different reasons. Just relationships that are requiring that we do not express certain things that feel quite authentic or that are a part of who we are. But I'll continue with referring to it as a young part. So a young part within us that has experienced a trauma of various kinds and has encapsulated that trauma and is exiled in the system, kind of pushed away. But it doesn't stop the feelings or the emotions or the beliefs. They just might not be in our conscious awareness all the time. And then the rest of our system organizes around this pain to try to protect from feeling it all the time, because that's overwhelming. We're not able to function if we're just sitting in unprocessed pain and trauma. So various ways protectors can show up. are, if you look over to the left side of this picture, an image of this, stick figure with their hands up towards the wall and a bit of a turning away. So that could be a protector, right? Just avoiding at all costs, looking away from the trauma, from the pain, not wanting to do anything that might move in and touch that pain. So managing life to avoid feeling these deeper feelings. Above that is an image that shows, chronic pain in the body. So there could be physical symptoms that show up that are either a distraction from what else is going on, but also could be, just the tightening from trying to avoid something that's there. The body, the physical manifestation could be chronic pain. There's also this little figure of like a marionette doll or a part that might be doing a bit of a performance, pretending that what's inside the system is not really there. And so instead there's a performance or a bit of a puppetry happening, whether it's internally or with the external environment, needing to control and be the puppet master to, again, try to manage the pain and avoid it. Next to that is an image that kind of shows rage, this explosion of anger or emotion. And this is also a form of protection. It's a lot ultimately easier to feel and express anger than it is to feel tenderness, vulnerability, pain, or the raw sensation of something that's unprocessed in our system. There's also the experience of dissociation, vacating the body to get away from the pain, or massive confusion, or busyness, noise in the mind. And then there's the other form of blocking ourselves from the experience. So, this image of the shield being held up, as I look at this, it's similar to the turning away, but this shows more of a polarization in the system. A part that is not just trying to protect and avoid this little one, but might even have a negative relationship towards it, seeing it as bad or something that should not be touched or moved towards. And then this other image of running away from it. So there are more ways that this could show up, and this is just more of like a general or an archetypal template to give some ideas of how our system might organize around these deeper wounds inside our system. So as we contemplate this model, I like to bring in the concept of it is real and it's imagination. Right? We refer to sensations, emotions, the somatic experience, thoughts, or the very vivid visual of an aspect of who we are. We refer to them as parts, not because we need to conceptualize or believe that these are literal parts of us or little people inside of us, but we do it because it actually helps us have a relationship with them. So as we contemplate that, I like to bring in that it'll shapeshift, right? It's not about creating stagnancy in the system or that we need a part to look one way and it'll stay that way forever. We want to keep a more open mind and hold these ideas loosely so that they can shift and change as we get to know them. So we want to hold the equal and opposite truths that it is real and it is imagination. So in Carl Jung's work, he talked about active imagination, and that's very much what this is. Active imagination is this process of participating with what's going on inside of us, recognizing that we actually can influence our inner realm by being in relationship with it, that we're not just passive observers and we're not victims to visuals or hallucinations, that we can develop self-leadership, higher self-leadership, so that we can be the wise parent for these parts, whether it's to support in processing what is unprocessed, moving towards trauma, and or to be able to lead our life in a way that is self-led, where all of our parts are included and consulted with and considered and respected. But we make decisions from our higher self, from our heart, from our right brain, which you'll learn more about if you work with me or with others who use right brain modalities as well. So without an attuned other to process and make sense of experiences, we want to imagine that parts of us will hold on to that pain, to that suffering, or to the limiting beliefs as lessons learned, and the emotional frequency from those events. And again, while other parts will shift into various protector roles to manage and or impulsively react to avoid that pain or diminish it when it's felt. It's important to recognize or consider that parts are not the burdens they carry. So it's not just I have an angry part, or I have a suicidal part, or I have a binge eating part. We want to expand beyond that and open to more fluid language and recognize I have a part that uses anger as a way to protect a deeper sensitivity. Or I have a part that impulsively moves towards food to soothe the pain of a deeper trauma or experience that I haven't been able to access yet. Right? So the way that we frame the language opens up to more of the fluidity, as I said, but also becomes more of a relational aspect, and recognizing I don't just have an angry part and I want to get rid of the anger. No, I have a part that's using anger to protect, to manage. And ultimately, or when we use that kind of language, it lends us towards curiosity. We can lean in and get to know it because it's not a stagnant or a static part. Right? It's much more complex and nuanced than that. Now, Richard Schwartz is known for saying there are no bad parts, and he wrote a book called No Bad Parts, of the many books that he's written. And what this is getting at is that the intention of all of these parts is to protect. Right? Even when there is a habit or behavior we are engaging in that is quite unhealthy or even harmful, what we want to recognize is that behavior began as a way to survive, as a way to protect from something else. And when we feel we are stuck in a behavior or a pattern, and we recognize that the intention is survival and protection, it starts to soften our system, and we can generally gain more access to compassion and curiosity. And that's when things start to shift and change. So the goal might be to shift and change behavior. But if we instead focus on being curious and understanding and getting to know why that behavior began and what it is trying to protect, that is a way of creating the change and shifts that we desire without a forceful agenda. It requires some patience, some listening, some understanding, and this continued practice that there are no bad parts. The intention is good. The intention is protection. So this is an image that I find really helpful to start conceptualizing how these parts might be organized in our system. And I invite you to imagine this, again, rather as a static image. Imagine that the center part self can actually expand while the exiles, managers, and firefighters could take up less space. And what that means is that as we unburden the exiles' pain, as we get to know the exiles, how they got stuck, where they might be stuck in time, and help them process or complete the survival reaction that was not able to be completed in a moment of time, that the burdens, the limiting beliefs, the emotional frequency that are stuck in the system can be released. And when that happens, the managers and the firefighters don't have to be on guard all the time. So they also soften and can step back. We're not getting rid of them. But once they have released their burdens and these extreme protective roles, they get to have more freedom in our system and engage and collaborate in our system in a different way. So they can drop their weapons, their shields, their protective strategies, and then they can discover what else they might want to do in our system, be more involved in creativity or fun or motivation or presence, right? The window of tolerance, our window of presence expands as these survival instincts or the stuck survival energy is released. So briefly, again, the exiles are what hold painful emotions that have been isolated or encapsulated from the conscious self for protection of the system or for the part's safety. So it can become increasingly extreme in their efforts to be cared for and to share their story. They carry burdens from being wounded. So examples could be exiled rage, a sense of dependency, feelings of shame, of fear, of terror, of grief, of loss, of loneliness. These are some pretty big emotions that need space to be felt and seen and witnessed and released. The managers are more proactive in general in our system. So they are working behind the scenes or in front of the scenes all day long, right? Protectors of the system. And they attempt to keep the person in control of every situation and relationship in order to protect them from feeling the hurt or of feeling the rejection of the exiles. So this might show up as being overly controlling, a strong striving, like keeping this in the extreme realm, right? So there's nothing wrong with occasionally wanting to be in control. But if there is a general sense of needing to be in control all the time, or else you feel really unsafe or not wanting to be somewhere or feeling really fearful when you lose control or really enraged when you don't have control, that would be a sign of, okay, there's some kind of management happening in your system to protect something deeper. So same with striving or overly caretaking, judging, being extremely passive or pessimistic, needing to have everything planned all the time or quite self-critical. Right? These are all examples of manager behavior. The firefighters are more reactive. So when the manager's attempts to keep the exile pain at bay does not work, well, then the firefighters will come onto the scene, right, to put out the flames of the exile. So they are also very protective of the system, but they act after the exiles are upset to either soothe them or distract from them. And any activity can be used to get away from exiles. So this could be dropping into sleep, excessive shopping, workaholic, a drive to have sex, controlling your diet, right? Overeating, undereating, over-exercising, under-exercising, not wanting to move at all, engaging in screens, computer, video games, various addictions, binge eating, suicidality, self-harm, excessive violence, dissociation, distraction, obsession, compulsion, fantasy. Right? So again, any behavior could be used as a firefighter. The question really is what triggered it, and following the organization of your system to get to know the cycles and what firefighter behavior shows up for you. Now at the center here, you can imagine self like the sun, right? So if there's a lot of exile pain, manager and firefighter behavior, this will be like clouds over top of the sun. But we want to keep in mind the sun is still there. The sun is always shining. And what we want to do is help alleviate the tension, the pain in these clouds so that the sun can be revealed and can be the leader of the system. So the higher self is the core or essential or center of the person. And when differentiated, it can act as an active and compassionate leader so that we have relationality within our system. We will always feel in in various moments in time, depending on context. There will be rage, there will be various feelings. Right? This is not about not feeling, it's about what is your relationship with that feeling? How are you being with it? Right? There is obviously things that will happen in life that will be very difficult. And the more we are self-led, the more we are able to be with what's happening inside and then address or engage in the internal and external world from this higher self, from this heart-led place. So IFS is a restraint release model. Right? This is not about adding strength or adding leadership or becoming a better person. This is actually about removing the protection, the excessive protection, getting into contact with the deeper emotional pain, so that, again, these protective behaviors and habits can be released. And then we can become more of who we truly are. Right? So again, the sun shining from behind the clouds. So we are invited to perceive our behavior, thoughts, and feelings through a lens of being parts-led or self-led. The practitioner Cease Sykes refers to this as self-led is me and my parts facing the world together, while being parts-led is my parts are going out there and I'm feeling vulnerable behind them. Fatima Finney is an IFS practitioner, and this is her list of goals of IFS. So any practitioner within the IFS model will have very similar goals to this, but Fatima Finney is also a very strong social justice oriented practitioner, and I am strongly aligned with practitioners that make sure to bring in this aspect into IFS, which is happening more and more over the last few years. So the goals of IFS are to liberate parts from their extreme roles, to restore trust in our higher self so that we're engaging in self-leadership, and to coordinate and harmonize the self and the parts so they're collaborating as a team, right, to achieve balance and wholeness. And with this one, I like the analogy to think of, being on a sports team. So maybe you're on a soccer field or a basketball court. And when we're parts led, we are looking through the eyes of one player and we are ahead of everybody else. And we are looking out into the scene and we don't see our team at all. We have this sense of, I'm on my own. I have to do it myself. Right? There might be fears. There might be posturing. It's very isolated. I'm on my own. And as we're engaging in the IFS model, right, coordinating, harmonizing, collaborating, we're learning how to look behind us and go, oh, I have a whole team back here. Right? I might have some beliefs, some experiences that I need to process and be supported in so that I can start leaning on my team and recognizing that I'm going to go a lot further. I'm going to have the support I need. I could even rest occasionally because I have this other whole group of people behind me that are skilled, that will add to my life and to my experience. The last one here is to bring more self-energy to the external systems, right, out into the world. So as we heal as individuals, it allows our self-energy, our heart energy to extend out into the world, out into our relationships so that we can help heal the world and we can help heal others. It's a really important aspect of this. Yes, we do our own inner work, but not just to stop there. Right? If we want to figure out creative ways to be in the world and support others who are very much struck with pain, with injustice, the way that we are operating internally is giving us insight into a template of how to operate out in the world, how to be in uncomfortable situations or conversations, how to lean in towards each other, allow there to be differences, but also recognize commonalities, right? To not blame or project. The more we can tolerate and be with our own pain, our own system, the more we can hold space for others and stay in connection, even when there's a bit of dis-ease or distress happening, so that we can move together to create a world that we all can be a part of. So I'm just going to mention this very briefly. Like, somatic therapy is an important part of IFS processing. It can be very body-based with IFS. It generally is. And so somatic therapy is simply speaking to that. It's a body-based practice. It's about bottom-up processing rather than thinking and moving top-down, which is for many of us default and what is most comfortable. We want to learn when, why, and how to use bottom-up processing. I'll briefly mention that somatic therapy is a Euro-Western term, but somatic therapy is right. There's models and templates and practices that have come from practitioners in the last 50 years, but it comes from cultures and timelines from around the world for generations, and it is not a new therapy, right? So it is not Euro-Western. It has been coined as somatic therapy by a Euro-Western model, but it's important to recognize that it is far-reaching, and it comes from wisdom passed down from around the world for generations. So somatic therapy is a process of being with each bodily sense and feeling that arises without jumping into analyzing, meaning making, or storytelling, which is very top down, or getting into action right away. So we want to learn how to pause, to track sensation, to develop language of interoception, of noticing what's happening in our body, right? A being with, which is very IFS, right? Being relational with what we're noticing, holding space for it, letting it move, staying with it for a while rather than jumping out of it right away. This experience helps us shift away from prior knowledge, which often is the habitual neural pathways and ideas and perspectives that we might be stuck in. Bottom-up processing helps us access new data and new possibilities that arise when we're present with what is. So we can develop new meaning, right? Tell new stories, analyze in a different way. And this helps us develop right brain hemispheric modes of processing, which is very embodied and is very experiential and heart-led. So again, why would we engage in this work? As within, so without. So I already mentioned this, that we do the inner work to develop new templates, new meaning, new ways of being, so that we can help be a source of good, a source of healing, a source of growth in our world. Lama Rod Owens has this beautiful quote that there is no collective liberation without individual liberation. So understanding freedom for oneself makes it possible to understand and engage in liberatory work for the collective. So my last page here, I want to acknowledge that this is a paradigm shift for many, right? Moving from the place of I'm an individual, these are my thoughts, I have control of what's going on inside of me. We're shifting into, no, I am a multiplicity, right? I have a higher self. The higher self in me is a reflection of the light, the higher self in you. Potentially the spirit we all feel is just a individual wave within the ocean of source or of spirit that we all come from, that we're all a part of. And being able to be relational with ourselves, that we have different thoughts and feelings and experiences, and we can turn towards them and be curious and actually gain insight and wisdom from slowing down and being with ourselves in a different way. So the somatic and imaginal realm of internal family systems is an opportunity to step out of the contracted and limiting space of materialism, of imperialism, of colonialism, and its devotion to a dominant thinking mind that says, I think, therefore I am. This perceives ourselves and the world through the lenses of separation, of isolation, of othering, and of scarcity, which is very left brain. So we can shift to, I feel myself in relationship to, therefore we are. Beautiful words from Gabrielle Cram. a wonderful practitioner. So by learning how to open to our expansive and interconnected essence that is wise, loving, and inherently relational, which is right brain leadership. So that's it. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, I would love to engage. I'm not against just making this presentation again based on your feedback. So let me know what stood out to you, what you would have wanted more of, anything that is quite unclear. I'd be happy to collaborate and co-create and just continue practicing delivering this content in a way that really lands and sparks interest and intrigue. So thank you, and I look forward to connecting.